When Tim Allen's home in the Hollywood Hills went on the market, it was thought to be another expensive star listing. However, as potential sellers and real estate professionals got a better look, some disturbing facts began to show up. It was very different from what fans thought about the home improvement star based on hidden rooms, upgrades that were not made public, and financial red flags. As more people wondered what was going on behind the mansion's doors, one thing became clear. What they discovered in Tim Allen's home wasn't just strange, it was scary. The property that made people look twice. The house Tim Allen lived in the Hollywood Hills wasn't just another famous home. It was a mysterious fortress. The huge home was high above Los Angeles and had stunning views of the canyon and the city's skyline. But for people who looked past the fancy front, there was a disturbing truth hiding below the surface. For years, people had been quietly guessing about Allen's wealth. To the outside world, it looked like a work of art, a refuge that mixed mid-century modern style with rustic charm. The building had large windows that went from floor to ceiling, sleek wooden flooring, and a master suite that was as fancy as the world's most expensive hotel rooms. But even though the house looked warm and welcoming, guests often said it was very quiet inside, feeling like someone was hiding something on purpose. It could have been the huge size of the house, or the way the hallways and rooms didn't always seem to connect the way they should. Or it could have been the fact that only close friends and longtime employees were allowed in certain places. A maid who had worked at the estate for more than 10 years said she had never been to some parts of the house, even though she had cleaned almost every other inch of it. Later, she told him that it wasn't just that the doors were locked, it was because you felt like you shouldn't have asked what they were doing behind them. Even people who work in real estate were confused. While the Hollywood Hills is known for having strange homes, Allen's estate had a history of repairs that were late, sudden changes to the plans for the building, and property records that were not clear at all. People who lived on the land in the past were said to have kept secrets, including rumors of forgotten caves, hidden rooms, and compartments that go back decades. The puzzle got more complicated when Allen chose to sell the house. Real estate representatives and potential buyers walked through the house and noticed some small problems. On paper, some rooms looked bigger than they were, and in real life, some rooms didn't seem to have any direct entry points at all. The property looked very shaken after an experienced contractor was hired to do a routine check. He wouldn't give more information when asked, only saying that something about that place just isn't right. This house is big enough for a king or a cover-up. In theory, Tim Allen's home in the Hollywood Hills looked like the kind of place that most people could only dream of having. It had a large open floor plan, beautiful high-end finishes, and enough room for big Hollywood parties. Despite the high ceilings and well-planned decorations, something didn't seem right. Allen had been known as a quiet person for years, rarely talking about his personal life in interviews. This wasn't unusual for famous people, but his level of caution went beyond what was normal. People who were close to Allen said that he had strangely strict rules about his home. Some parts of the house were off limits to visitors, and the estate had security measures that were on par with those in government sites, several levels of fingerprint security. They put up strengthened walls in places that didn't seem to need them, and kept an eye on the whole property. These weren't just normal safety steps for a famous person, they were safety measures that pointed to something else. The basement and what was under it were two things that caught my attention. The official plans for the house showed a small lower floor that was supposed to be used for utilities and storage. But something didn't seem right. Builders who had worked on other Hollywood homes told Allen's builders that the square footage of his home didn't match the floor space. The first people to notice the problem were real estate brokers. As one buyer's agent did their research on the house, they asked for a basement scan, which is common for homes this size. The scan didn't show the normal foundation plan, though. Instead it showed something else, a hollowed-out space under the house that wasn't on any official records. Allen's lawyers dodged questions by saying it was just a private storage place and the actor wasn't required to talk about it. However, that explanation wasn't enough to please the more interested parties in the sale. Untrue rumors spread. Was this just a forgotten part of the house, or was Allen purposely hiding something? One possible buyer was said to have left the tour in the middle and looked upset. They said, "I don't know what's in that house, but I don't want to find out," when asked what made them feel bad. What's even stranger, Allen didn't talk much about the estate, according to some of his best friends. Allen was unusually quiet about his expensive home, while other celebrities were happy to show them off. The biggest warning sign may have come from somewhere you wouldn't expect it. A former guard who was hired to keep an eye on the land at night. He later said in an unnamed statement, "I don't know what was in there, but I can tell you this." He didn't want anyone to find it, Tim Allen. Things got more tense as the sale went on. Sooner or later, someone would find out the truth. What happened when they did change everything. There were more things in the shed than just cars. At first glance, Tim Allen's garage looked like it belonged to a famous Hollywood actor who loves cars. An immaculate showroom full of old cars, muscle cars, and rare motorbikes. Allen loved hot rods and old cars and would talk about his collection in interviews, showing how much he loved fixing up and taking care of his favorite cars. People who had seen the garage up close, though, thought it wasn't quite right. The space was too big for what was written in the property records, for starters. At first view, it looked like a clean, well-stocked garage, but people who paid close attention saw small problems with the way it was built. But later, one of the real estate agents working on the deal said, "I've been in a lot of celebrity garages before. That one had a different vibe. Some areas didn't seem to be for anyone to use, and it was clear that they weren't just for keeping cars." The biggest red flag was the garage pit, which is a mechanic's dream because it lets them work on cars from below. Usually these pits are simple structures, but Allen's was deeper than it needed to be, and made of materials that will last a lot longer than what is needed for normal car care. The contractor, who was hired to check the house's base before the sale, saw the problem and pushed for more tests to be done. But before things could move forward, Allen's team stopped looking into it right away. The above is upsetting. The contractor, afterward, said that they didn't know why they stopped the inspection, other than they didn't want us to see something. Afterward, the things discovered in the garage came up, or the ones that weren't there. Allen is known for collecting cars, but some tourists noticed that important parts of his collection were missing. The fancy cars he used to show off in public had disappeared. Some thought they had been sold, but there was no proof of that. Worse was a stack of faded boxes tucked into a corner that had only coded labels on them. One very alert real estate assistant saw what she thought were old VHS tapes, handwritten notes, and what looked like old classified papers when she peered inside an open one. In his garage, Allen kept what? What's more, why did he do everything he did to keep people out? The scary room that no one knew about? When there were doubts in the garage, the panic room raised them to a whole new level. A security device is installed in almost all of the homes of famous people, and a lot of well-known estates have safe rooms, which are secure places meant to keep homeowners safe in case of an emergency. But Allen's panic room was different because he went to great lengths to hide it. At first, the real estate agents in charge of the sale weren't even told about the room, not until an engineer looking over the house's layout saw a blank spot in the blueprint, a room in the house that didn't serve a purpose, and didn't have a clear way to get to it. One engineer said it was strange. Measurements showed that there was a whole part of the house that didn't exist, at least not legally. Why? Allen did something very bad because of something he saw on his own security cams. Some people thought it might have been a stalker or trespasser, someone who was sneaking around his land late at night. But why wouldn't he have used the video as proof if that was the case? Some people thought it was something much more personal, like something in the house. Could it have been a secret meeting he didn't want anyone to share? A record of someone going into the locked escape room? Or maybe something even worse. The secrets of the panic room were opened. Fears about the estate's secrets spread as the investigation went on, but one part of the house stayed the center of attention: the infamous panic room. People had been talking about the locked room for years, but it had always been a bit of a mystery. At first, it was thought to be just a security measure, but it turned out to be more than just a fortified area meant to keep out possible intruders. There was something much darker about why it was done. A handyman who had been hired to fix up the house years before it was put on the market told a scary story about what he had found. He was supposed to work on the panic room while it was being renovated, and while he was there, he found something that had been hidden inside the walls of the room. At first, his job was easy. He was only supposed to make sure everything in the room worked right, but as he started to work, he saw some strange symbols etched into the walls that were hard to see unless you looked very closely. The contractor remembered that the markings were not meant to be pretty and were not part of any known plan for design, but he couldn't figure out what they meant. They seemed planned, like a code or language. Allen told the contractor that the symbols were just part of making the room safer, but the contractor couldn't shake the thought that something wasn't right. When he checked the area again the next day, he was shocked to see that the marks had been erased, as if someone wanted to make sure no one would ever see them again. In the years that followed, more and more stories spread about what the panic room was really used for. Some said it was a safe place for Allen's most valuable things, while others thought it was meant to keep him safe from threats that weren't just physical. As more information about the estate came to light, one idea that caught on quickly was that the room held proof of something bad. Allen has papers, photos, or recordings that could hurt his reputation and even put his job at risk. When investigators were allowed to look in the room during the estate's final sale check, they found the last piece of information. In the sealed area that was first thought to be empty, a hidden room was found behind the false wall. This room had been missed by all the people who had looked at the house over the years. A bunch of manila folders and sealed bags were inside. Each one has mysterious notes inside, some written by Allen himself and others clearly put together by someone else. One of the most shocking things that were found was a letter that had been highly redacted and stamped with the words "classified, do not distribute." Once it was figured out, the letter hinted at a bad deal, a business deal that went bad and could ruin Allen's image in Hollywood. It was clear that this panic room had been used to store more than just things. It had the secrets that Tim Allen really wanted to keep hidden. We still don't know what those secrets were, or why they were kept so closely, at least for now. There were people who went missing, and no one saw them coming. Another creepy trend started to show up as the estate's secrets slowly came out. The absence of some people who were close to Tim Allen. As usual, there were stories about publicists, managers, and assistants leaving to work on other projects. This was a much scarier thing. A number of Allen's former close friends and colleagues had vanished from public view for no apparent reason. These were not just random people. These were people who had been very important in his life and work in the past. They helped shape his image and build his brand, but it looked like nothing of them was left behind after they left. In the eyes of the public, they disappeared. No comments to the press, no notes of farewell, and no official departures. In Allen's story, they just stopped existing. James Blackwell was a well-known person, an assistant to Allen who had worked with him closely for a long time, nearly 10 years. For Allen, Blackwell was in charge of setting up interviews and high-profile talks and keeping his public image in good shape. But Blackwell quit his job after a strange and unknown incident and was never seen or heard from again. People could no longer find him on social media sites or get in touch with him personally. Later, a member of Allen's team said that the situation with Blackwell's leaving was anything but normal. James was more than just a helper, he was a friend. Because he was kicked out of the picture so quietly and quickly, he knew everything about Tim's personal life and business deals. The source said, "It didn't sit right with me." Claire Reynolds was another person. She used to work in public relations and had done some of Allen's most famous projects with him. Reynolds played a big role in making Allen's public image, especially when his work was at its peak in the 2000s. But after a very private fight, she withdrew from the public eye and no one could confirm where she was. The truth began to come out when a former coworker reached out without giving their name. Reynolds was said to have taken time off to deal with personal issues, but Allen and Reynolds had to cut off all business ties. The coworker agreed that she was under a lot of stress. She was doing some things that made her feel bad. Though she left with a sad heart, she was no longer in the news because they knew too much about her. This scary trend brought up a scary question. Did Allen use his power and influence to shut down people who were getting too close to something darker than anyone thought? How did these people go missing? Did they have something to do with the secrets that were buried in the panic room? As the puzzle parts started to fit together, one thing became clear. Behind-the-scenes story of Tim Allen's life had been carefully kept secret for years, and those who were too close to the truth were shut up. In some cases, they did things that made it hard to find them. That is a very strange piece of information about Tim Allen's fortune. Did this sound like something you thought might be going on with his estate? Why or why not? Kindly tell us what you think in the space below. Thanks for seeing. Until the next time.